Welcome to Don't Be Caged by Your Age, Barbara Greenspan Shaiman. I'm so happy you're here to share how you're shattering age-related expectations. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy to be here with you today. It's a gift. It's my pre-Thanksgiving gift.
Oh my gosh, we're recording everyone on November 25th, 2024. And I had the sincere pleasure of finding Barbara. Know where I was pulling on a thread, but you know how I pull on threads, and this incredible, vibrant, and extraordinary woman popped up into my world, and I just found her on LinkedIn and immediately connected, and she immediately responded, and we hopped on a video call. And wait till you hear her story. So amazing. But before we begin, Barbara, please tell listeners how many years has the world enjoyed your delicious, vibrant presence? And where do you hail from?
I am a very proud 76 and 8/10 year old. I'm almost 77. That's what that means. I come with COVID white hair, red lipstick, very dangly earrings. Now, I was born in Regensburg, Germany, to my parents who were Holocaust survivors. And at the age of 3, thanks to the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, HIAS, I was brought to America, landed by ship at Ellis Island, and grew up in the Washington Heights area of New York City.
Wow. Well, that tells you listeners so much about Barb right away and how she views the world and the inspiration that has framed who she is and how she moves throughout the planet and the world. And we're going to learn more about the impact of her mother and so many good things. But, Barb, I want to talk first about this incredible organization that you founded over 25 years ago, I believe, called Champions of Caring. Take us back to the moment that inspired you to create this incredible organization and share the impact that you had hoped to make back then. And then we'll talk about the actual impact that you have made.
Well, you know what, Andy? It all starts with a story about a toothbrush. Let me tell you why. My mother used to compulsively brush her teeth. She could brush her teeth 4 or 5 times or more a day. And when she had dementia, she would wake up her caretaker in the middle of the night because she had to brush her teeth. I never understood that. And when we asked her why, she just would go like this, "Don't ask me." Well, Andy, I found out what this was really about. In 1990, my mother, my father, my brother, and I, and 40 Holocaust survivors went to Auschwitz, the concentration camp where my mother and paternal grandmother had been interned. As we were standing at the gates, my mother turned to me and said, "I was 19 years old when I got here. I had been on the last transport out of the large ghetto. I had lost everyone and everything, but I snuck a toothbrush into my dress. I didn't have clean water. I didn't have toothpaste, but just the feeling of the bristles on my teeth made me feel human. They took that toothbrush away from me at Auschwitz." Well, Andy, I can't even tell you. I was shaking. I started crying. I was so upset, first of all, that I had been making fun of her, that I never understood the trauma behind why she was brushing her teeth. And I looked at her and I said, "Mom, I love you, but I need to go do something for a moment. You just stay with Dad and the group and I'll be right back." And I ran into the courtyard and I was sobbing hysterically. Right in the courtyard, there were a group of German teenage boys, and they were laughing and clowning around. And I thought, how can you behave this way at a concentration camp?
Right.
And I was so incensed. I went up to them, and German is my first language. And I said to them in German, "Do you know where you are? How can you behave this way?" And they kept laughing. Bam, my life changed forever at that moment. I realized that at the time I was recruiting doctors and senior level healthcare executives for a living. I loved what I was doing. I was good at it and it was a lucrative profession. But I have a master's in education and I used to teach for a lot of years. And I love that as well. And I thought, you know what? I need to go back to Philadelphia where I live and I need to work with youth. I need to make heroes out of young people who do extraordinary service. And I thought, why do we just create these huge award ceremonies for straight A students, for great athletes? Why are they the heroes of our time? Aren't young people who are doing service and changing the world the heroes? Shouldn't we be celebrating them? And this name, Champions of Caring, popped into my head. I got very, very excited. Of course, everyone that I shared this with initially thought, oh my God, there she goes again. Well, I'm very blessed with some very, very dear friends. I called my friends Bob and Suzanne Wright. Bob at the time was the CEO of NBC Universal, and they knew my parents. And when I shared the toothbrush story, Bob so generously said, NBC will help you. And then he said, by the way, Barb, I'm meeting with Steven Spielberg in a few weeks about this film Schindler's List that he's making, and we're going to put it on NBC. Why don't you bullet out what your thoughts are, and I will read them to Steven. I got funding initially from both NBC and from Steven Spielberg's Righteous Persons Foundation. So I wanted to honor and celebrate youth who are making a difference and to teach them to become social activists. So this toothbrush changed my life forever.
Oh my gosh. Listeners, I don't know about you, but it's all I can do to not sob right now. That is such a powerful story. And I've heard it before, but it's touched my heart even more, Barbara, especially as I look at the landscape today, where once again, we need to champion those who serve, right? Who care about others. And I I do recall though that you have a connection to Schindler.
Yes, my father was from Krakow, Poland, and he worked for Oskar Schindler in his factory, Emalia, where they made enamel goods. And my father, unfortunately, was not on the famous list. Instead, he was sent on the death march and wound up in the Theresienstadt concentration camp outside of Prague, where he met my mom.
Wow, and I've been there, and I know what that looks and feels like, so I can only imagine what it was like under those conditions. So it's so powerful. And so, listeners, if you wanna just quickly check out Champions of Caring, please visit championsofcaring.org and follow this powerful platform on Instagram, Champions of Caring. And we're talking to the one, the only Barbara Greenspan Shaman. Listeners, 76 years old, was almost 77. Barbara is still in the stream of purpose. What year did you found Champions of Caring? When was that?
In 1995, I gave up my executive search practice and I did not want to stay involved. I was so driven to do something with youth to help them become a mensch, a good, kind, caring person who can really create social justice projects, that I walked away from my practice and decided to work with youth. But I wanted to work with youth from all corners of Philadelphia, from the inner city, from the main line, from private schools, from religious schools, because I realized there are not a lot of opportunities for disparate groups of kids to get together. They stay in their own little groups and their silos. And I
Right.
thought, wouldn't it be great if we could bring all of these different kids together and teach them to become social entrepreneurs? So we actually started with just an award ceremony. And students in high school were asked to write an essay describing what they were doing to change the world and get two letters of reference. And we had a committee that read these applications. And we started off with a celebration event where we would bring them all together, those who, were accepted into the program. honor them. The mayor would come, the governor would come, people from the Archdiocese of Philadelphia, the Jewish community, different communities came, and it was a wonderful celebration of youth. And Andy, in the second year, one of the students came up to me and said, Barb, this is really great, but you're just not doing enough. And at first I thought, really? I'm not doing enough? What should I be doing? And she
Well,
looked at
and
me,
also, how old was this person?
15. And first I thought, wow, that's chutzpah. That's, something else.
That's a future leader.
That's it. Okay, that's it. And I said, well, what do you mean? She says, well, why don't you teach us to be social activists? We need to know how to write a grant. We need to know how to do an elevator pitch, give a speech, write a proposal, figure out how to attract people to our cause. And I thought, this kid is smarter than I am. And we created the Ambassadors of Caring Leadership Program, which was open to champions of caring who were honored, who would commit to meeting once a month on the last Sunday of the month for 3 hours. And we met at Drexel University. And I want to do a pitch for the wonderful Dr. Konstantin Papadakis, who was president of Drexel. I approached him and told him my story and asked if we could use Drexel campus. And his name, we all called him Taki. Taki listened to my story and said, Barbara, I'm your partner. My wife, Ileana, family hid Jews during the Holocaust in Salonika, Greece. You have access to classrooms, my auditorium, different professors. Please join with us. And what was so wonderful about that was none of the parents were concerned because the kids were going to a place like Drexel, which was really very cool if you're a high school student. And for kids who couldn't afford to get there, we were able to give them tokens. And it was the perfect meeting place for disparate groups of kids to come together. They all felt very special because of the environment. And I'm just eternally grateful to Drexel and to Taki Papadakis for giving me this extraordinary opportunity.
Oh, everybody send good vibes that way
Yeah.
and deep gratitude. And of course, I've got the clappers out as well for Taki and his understanding of your vision, but also your ability, your unique ability to know how to reach out and not just galvanize, but I'm having a hard time finding that word where you bring others into your cause,
Well, you
right?
can't do it alone, Andy.
No, of
That
course
you
not.
know what? I know that. I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses. But my biggest strength, I think, is meeting people and getting them inspired and then having them join me because I could never do any of the things I've done alone. I don't have all those skill sets. I know myself. I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm not good at. And
Well, and Barb, as a career woman who focused on recruitment,
yeah,
right? You learned and honed extraordinary skills because you had to share the vision. First, for the hospital that doctor might get a job at, or helping that hospital think great things about that doctor they might want to onboard as talent. That is a skill you honed. So when you were called to launch Champions of Caring, you had the most important leadership skill was the ability to recruit great talent, great
yeah.
partners, great everything.
I'm happy you're saying that because I can't do any of this alone. And I'd
No.
like to say to your listeners, if you have a vision and a passion, surround yourself with smart people, with visionaries, because it creates a project of a magnitude that you would never imagine. If anyone had told me, Andy, that we would work with 10,000 kids in the greater Philadelphia region, high school students, who gave 1 million hours of service locally, nationally, and globally. I would have never believed it. I went into this thinking I could work with 5 kids, 10 kids, 50 kids, 100 would be amazing. I had no clue. Would the school districts be amenable? Who would be my supporters? Could I put together a board of directors? Could we get educators who can help support the vision? It takes as of the Hillary Clinton, a village and beyond to make this happen. But as I sit here in 2024 and reflect back, I feel so blessed that there were so many people who stepped up, who said, yes, I can help you with this. I like your vision. I want to make this happen.
Well, and listeners, this is how you start. You have to be okay with 1, 5, 10, and then you get informed as you go along the way. And it's just starting. Creating the space is so important. And for those of you tuning in, I just want to remind you that we're chatting with the extraordinary Barbara Greenspan Shaman of Champions of Caring. That's championsofcaring.org. Be sure to follow them on Instagram at Champions of Caring to learn more about this extraordinary story. I happen to love, love, love the name of Champions of Caring, especially since we put so much emphasis on being a great hockey player, a great baseball player, great soccer player, great football player. Those are where we see champions. You're like, no, 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 Champions of Caring. How did you come up with that name? It's brilliant.
Because just what you said, it's champions of the heart.
Right.
Why aren't we celebrating the heart? So, can I tell you a quick story
Yeah.
about Mench Test? When a Mensch is a German Yiddish word that means a really good, kind, caring person. When I was 7 years old, my mother used to play the Mensch game with me, and it horrified me initially. She would say to me every day when she sent me off to school, I want you to do well today. I want you to be nice today. I want you to have fun today. But most important, I want you to be a mensch, a kind, caring human being. And when you come home tonight, you're going to tell me what you did to be a mensch. So, Andy, I'll never forget, I was 7 coming home on the school bus, and I came up with this vision that I was Superwoman, and I jumped off of a building and saved all these people. And I was so excited. I ran into the house. I said, my mother said, so here's a snack and tell me, how were you a mensch today? And I start telling her this story, and she goes, honey, I can smell a lie. You did not jump off of a building. You can't fly. This is not true. I want you to think about being kind, sharing your snack. Let me give you some more ideas. Sit next to someone who doesn't have friends. Invite them to be on the team when you're playing a sport. Have them come over to our house over the weekend. That's being a mensch. Well, do you know, Andy, I spoke to my mother multiple times a day until she died about 14 years ago. And
Mm.
the conversation included, were you a mensch today? And I go to bed at night. Some people count sheep. I think of, if mom were calling me tonight and asked, were you a mensch today? What would I tell her? And then her next question would be, and what can you do tomorrow? And so that whole notion of being a mensch, of reaching out, of being kind was what informs my life. Don't sit still, silent, and indifferent. Stand up, speak out. These were the lessons that my mother drummed into me. And this is the one you'll love. A head without a heart is dangerous. Really smart people can do very evil things. So you need to connect the head and the heart in everything you do in life.
So, Barb, can we just take a little segue here to talk about how to be a mensch when so many people in America and other parts of the world too have been given permission to be mean, divisive, cruel, bullies, as if it's the new way of being in the world. And we recall when Michelle Obama said, when they go low, we go high. And in theory, that sounds fine. But I'm from Boston. I'm the type that's like, okay, we're gonna get into trouble. You can't ask me any questions. And whose car are we gonna take? I mean, it's more on I'm ready to fight. And while I am kind and compassionate and empathetic, having been bullied for years myself, both from children in my neighborhood, but also from my family of origin, I came out even more of a warrioress, whether any kind of injustice, any kind of mean spirit. I don't know that I can be kind to those who are being cruel. And I was just wondering if you had any advice for our current landscape and for me.
Well, let me tell you a story. I was traveling recently. We were filming part of the documentary, The Coral Ring Legacy, which I'd love to share more about with you. And Rich and I were out for the evening, and we met these two women, and they were very striking, very lovely. They came over to our table and they complimented me, I think, on what I was wearing, and we started chit chatting. And with full disclosure, I was a big Kamala Harris supporter, and they were very big Donald Trump supporters. And somehow we got to that topic because it was right before the election, and they started smearing my candidate. And I fell into the trap and said, "How can you say that?" And said a few things. And then I saw what happened, how angry, how ugly, how divisive we were. So I looked at them and I said, "Can I tell you a story about this coral ring that I'm wearing?" And they looked at me and said, "Really? Why is this such an important story?" I said, "Well, this story informs my entire life." And it broke the tension. And I proceeded to tell them. And may I tell you the story, Andy?
Yes, please.
So, this coral ring is the most important thing that I own, not because of its monetary value, but because of its history. My grandmother was an entrepreneur. She was extraordinary. In the 1900s and 1920s, she was running different kinds of businesses, and she was living in Krakow, Poland, and she realized that there were no corals in Poland. She had done some research and spoke to people and found out that in Livorno, Italy, there was a woman, Signora Maffei, who had a coral business. And my grandmother, on her own, hired a tutor, learned Italian, took the train from Krakow, Poland to Livorno, Italy, and purchased this coral stone that I'm wearing in the ring. She went back to Krakow, and unfortunately, it was late 1930s, and she knew that horrible things were happening to the Jews and people around her. And she decided to take this coral ring and her Sabbath candlesticks and gave them to one of the Polish men who worked in her business and said, "Bad things are happening to Jews. I want you to keep these possessions for me. And if I'm lucky enough to survive, I'll come back and get them." Well, my mother met my father in the Theresienstadt concentration camp. They both had typhus. My mother weighed 60 pounds. My father weighed 80 pounds. My parents were liberated in May of 1945 and went together to the cities they came from. My father first went with my mother to Lodz, Poland, where she found out that out of 65 people in her family, she was the sole survivor. They then went to Krakow, where my father miraculously found his mother, his brother, and a cousin. And when my grandmother saw my mother, she started crying tears of joy and said, "Oh, a wedding. This is incredible. There's life for all of us." And then she said, "Oh, you know what? The coral ring. I have a coral for your engagement ring." They went to find the man that my grandmother had given the ring and Sabbath candlesticks to. And you're not going to believe this. He denied having these possessions. After all that had happened to during the Holocaust, he didn't want to give this back. But my grandmother was very astute. She went and got the police, and miraculously, this ring appears. This became my mother's engagement ring. For my 50th birthday, my mother took this ring off of her finger and put it on mine. And she said to me, "Every time you look at your hand, I want you to think about the beauty of the stone, the light, the color, and how much joy it brought me after surviving the Holocaust and realizing I could now start a new life with your father. And then I had you and your brother, and life became good again." And she said, "When you look at this ring, think about being a mensch. Think about being kind. Think about what you can do to help someone, to be outgoing and to really be open to people. And if you do this, it will really make me happy forever. So when I look at this ring so many times a day, I think of my mom. I think of what a beautiful woman she was and what this ring meant to her as it offered her a new life and what it means to me. And it will be passed on to my daughter and my granddaughter.
Well, and so what when you told the story to those 2 voters, women where you were initially were like going batting heads, what was their reaction? What was their response?
Well, it broke the tension. They started admiring the coral ring. We forgot about politics. We came back on a human level. And
Yes.
then they said to me, we would like to help you with your documentary. We live in Louisiana and we would like to help bring your film here. And what touched me so deeply was that a few weeks ago on Instagram, they responded to a reel of me telling this coral ring story. So, Andy, I say to you and I say to your listeners, yes, you can be civil. Stay away from the politics. Go to the human issues. Reach out from your heart. And it felt so good. Do you know when we left them, they hugged me and they
Oh,
wanted my business card and to stay together. And it started contentious. It was angry. Our voices were raised, but it ended on a really warm note. So I think as long as we stay civil and open to other issues, we can go on and come up as the best versions of ourselves given the challenges of today.
Barb, thank you so much for that advice. I know me and many others are struggling with how to be as we go forward, right? Because so many of us are justice advocates and allies to marginalized communities. And so we're very concerned, and we're very concerned about the population that's okay with all of that. And especially what's happening to so many women in trying to just have a baby, right? And have it successfully. So thank you for showing us how we can stay in the human level. This is going to be quite the extraordinary action for us to take so that we aren't victims, right? We don't want to be quiet. That's what we learned from what your mom and dad went through is to stand up, but at the same time shift the focus into humans caring for humans and touching the heart because as you said before, if you have a smart head, but you don't have that heart, it's not gonna work. Listeners, we're chatting with the incredible Barbara Greenspan Shaman, founder of Champions of Caring, and be sure to visit the website championsofcaring.org to learn more about this extraordinary organization, which now, 25 years later, you have the data which is so incredible. You started with the 15-year-old, saying, "We're not doing enough. We need to do more," right? To, I can only imagine where all these lives you've touched and shown them how they can not only get educated to be justice warriors and advocates, social justice changers, and how to get educated, but also to find a way to get in within organizations, to create change through policy, to create change through being educators, to create change by being founders of nonprofit organizations. Where are things at today?
Well, I have to say that I'm so thrilled that Dr. Kimberly Goyette, who's the head of the sociology department at Temple University, created a study which was called I Can Literally Change the World, where she let's backtrack. I like to get my family involved and teach these lessons as well. My granddaughter, Becca, I approached her and I said, it's 20 something years later, and I've lost touch with a lot of these high school students who are now in their 30s and 40s. And we want to do a longitudinal study to see what was the impact, the long term impact of this program. Are they still doing service? Are they teaching these values to their children? Do they care about changing the world? And I gave Becca the assignment of finding these young people. I had emails, Andy, from 20 years ago.
Sure, when we were just barely emailing.
Because I had phone numbers before I had emails, because I started this in 1995 and we only had really phone numbers. And Becca came up with the list, and Dr. Goyette and a team created a study, and it was just so extraordinary to find these young people living all over the United States, in Europe, in Asia. And the study showed that Champions of Caring had established a platform for leadership and activism, that it fostered an environment of acceptance and belonging, that it empowered students to develop lifelong skills to become social activists, that it brought together diverse groups of students. And I had no idea what the findings would be. And this truly was music to my ear. And it was just the study was just published in the Journal of Sociology and Leadership. And I am so thrilled. You can find the link to the study on our website. But I never realized the potential. And this is what I want to say to your listeners. I didn't go into anything that I've ever done knowing what could happen. I went in with a dream, with passion, with great people, and with some goals. And to be able to sit back 25 years later and see the impact, and then to film these young people. We went to Usikaupunki, Finland to film one of our superstars, Granger Simmons. We were in New Orleans, Washington, D.C., Philadelphia. Uh, it's amazing. They're everywhere, and it's a thrill to find these young people and see the extraordinary projects and not-for-profits that they're creating. In Usikaupunki, one of our students, former champions, Granger Simmons, is working with asylum seekers from Ukraine, Slovakia, Iraq, helping them move into a world that they don't know, but giving them housing and introducing them to the teachers of of their children, making them feel acclimated. One of our young people started an organization in New Orleans teaching math to inner city kids who were having trouble with math, using sports and nature as catalysts to train them in math. One of our other amazing young champions, Naya Gupta, started when she was 15, helping orphans in India. She sold all of her toys. She had a garage sale when she was 15, took the money and went to India. Every year they would visit her grandmother, and she would buy toys for these orphans. Well, let's fast forward this, Andy. She has worked with 30,000 orphans
Oh my
and has received so many honorary awards for the work that she's doing to change the world. These young people are amazing. They are my role models. Their vision, their energy, their joy of life, and their ability to work in difficult times. No matter what's happening in their lives, they keep on with the vision. I
Be
want to speak.
well, because you gave them the skill set to do that. You made heroes out of them, you taught them, right, how to do that, and the ripple effect, my gosh, the legacy for your mother, right, that you have given by having this ripple effect throughout the world is so profound, Barb.
Well, my mother was very smart. And I used to ask her, how did you survive Auschwitz? How did you get through these very difficult times? How did you deal with realizing that everyone in your family was killed? You were the only one left. How did you go on? And she said to me, in life, you get what you get. You can't control that. But what you can control is how you deal with it. I said, well, what do you mean? She said, in my darkest hours at Auschwitz, when I was starving, was so sick, I would dream that one day I could get married. I could have a family. I could become a mom and have holiday dinners, Passover Seder. And these dreams would keep me going in the most dire of times. And I would say to your readers that if they want to read an extraordinary book, read Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He talks about this logotherapy, this way of, again, he talks about how do you deal with difficult situations. You can't control what's happening, but how you approach it is so key. And this is a lesson that I've learned and used throughout my entire life, especially when things were very difficult.
Are you sure your last name isn't Shaman?
No, it's not.
It's no Shaman.
No, it's not.
It's just the words of wisdom and giving us ways to help ourselves navigate the current landscape is so incredible. Now, what is very exciting, and listeners and viewers, this is what 76 looks like. Barb is in the middle of creating, talk about shattering age related expectations and stereotypes, is building, creating, bringing to the world a film called, a documentary actually called The Coral Ring Legacy. Barb, how's it going? How can we add wind to your sails? Tell us all about it.
So, you know, let me just start. I wrote this book, Live Your Legacy Now, because I believe that legacy is not what you leave when you're gone, but rather what you live every single day. And I actually wrote this book when my mother, my father, and my husband were all dying. And I wrote it as a way to stay sane. I wrote it on yellow legal pads in different hospitals' rooms. But I felt it was a tribute to all of them and what they had taught me about life. And it was very cathartic for me. But I didn't know how to write a book. But I thought, let me try it. I'm not afraid of new challenges because I had my son, who was a journalist, helping me, and some very dear friends helping me who had written books. Well, Andy, let me tell you what happened. In about 3 years ago, I got a Zoom call from some former champions of carry on my 74th birthday. And they said to me, "Happy birthday, Barb. How you doing? You know, the world's in a really tough place. We need more champions. And what can we do about it?" And I thought, "What do you mean? What can we do about it?" Says, "Barb, we need to inspire people. We need to get everybody involved, not just high school kids. What about people in their 20s, 30s, 50s, 60s, 80s? Everyone can do it." And I'm listening and going, "Yep, I agree with all of that." And they go, "Let's make a movie." I said, "Are you kidding me? I don't know how to make a movie." And one of them said, "You didn't know how to write a book. You wrote a book." I said, "But a movie, I don't know how to make a movie. No, I don't, know. No." And they were saying, "Barb, this is the time. Why don't you use some of us as role models?" I said, "Well, I like that idea, but I don't know how to make a movie." They said, "Barb, everything you've done in your life, you didn't know how to do, but you sort of figured it out. Figure it out." And I'm thinking, do I need this? Do they understand? I
At the
said,
age of 74, is this what I need to be doing? How to do
"Right,
a documentary? Where's the
right,
YouTube for that?
like, go some." But do you know what happened? It haunted me, Andy.
Oh,
I didn't sleep. I
that's what
keep
happens.
I got the bug. But whoa, what a bug. I was thinking about this nonstop. And Richard would say to me, "Stop it. Stop talking about this movie. You don't know how to." Not that he was discouraging me, but he said, "Just because they sent this to you doesn't mean you have to do it." But he doesn't know me that well. I had to do it. But of course, I didn't know how to do it. So I started calling everybody I know to say, "I'm a documentarian. Do you know a good filmmaker? I need to figure out how to make a movie. Who can I talk to?" And this went on for a year. I cannot believe it. For 1 year.
But let me just take a moment for this is a learning opportunity for everyone. First of all, if something is niggling at you, because I have said no many times to some of the things I ended up doing, not just no, but hell no. And it would not stop pounding at my door until I said yes. First of all. Secondly, what you did, and it takes time, was to ask people, do you know? Because then you start telling your, what's that, reactive part of your brain, whatever it is, you've given it that problem to solve. Who do you know? You start asking, and that is key to finding out your next steps. Sorry to interrupt you, Barb, but I just wanted to share that learning moment with the listeners.
Well, let me share another learning moment. You know
Yeah.
the word chutzpah?
Yeah.
Chutzpah is a Yiddish word that means unmitigated gall. I have chutzpah, but I try to do it in a very nice way. So wherever I am, at a party, at a concert, at a restaurant, hey, do you know anybody who's a documentarian? I'm about to embark upon a project which I don't know how to do, and they all go, but I really want to do this. Who do you know? Well, Andy, I hit jackpot. I gave a speech in Philadelphia at the Jewish Federation. And in the speech, I figured out to say, "Put away, everybody in the room. I need a filmmaker." I get off the stage, and this woman runs up to me and says, "I really enjoyed your speech. I have your filmmaker." I said, "Really?" She says, "Here's his name. Look him up. And look at this thing that he did called On the Other Side of the Fence." His name was Henry Nevison, and he did a film at Germantown, which partnered Germantown Friends students with kids who had CP. And they put together a musical performance. It is one of the most moving films I've ever seen, and he won an Emmy Award. I called him up like, I don't know, 8 o'clock the next morning. I said, "Oh my God, I just saw your film On the Other Side of the Fence. I need to talk to you." And that's how it happened because up to that point, I was so frustrated. I felt like I was going in circles. This was not meant to be.
Right.
Let go of it. But once I found him, and we had the longitudinal study done. So there was data. It wasn't just, oh, Barb said, like, really, Barb said, so what? But here's the data. And then I put together an extraordinary team of consultants. Of the secret really is finding a project that ignites you and then finding talented people of all ages. And that's a key term now. I now include college kids and even younger age kids in our committees because their vision, their creativity, their knowledge of social media, which I know nothing about, and they know that, their ability to say, let's make a reel out of this interview and let's put it on Instagram. Okay, do you know how to do it? I don't. I mean, I'm fine to admit my failings. There's so many, but that doesn't define me. I think with energy and passion and a willingness to partner with other people who
Yeah.
bring skills to the table, that's magic.
Oh, yeah, you give them permission to bring their fully expressed self to add to the wind of the sails of the big purpose,
Right.
right? Oh,
So
it's beautiful.
it's really about opening up to being open to the world,
Right.
opening up to the people around you, saying, I know how to do this, but I don't know how to do this. Please help me. I'm so grateful for what you're sharing." It's never a one person show.
Yeah.
Takes a lot of people, many villages to make dreams come true. But find your soulmates. Find the people that you like to be with, that you have a dance that you do together, that
Right.
hear the music and you really light up to the concept. It has to be fun. I don't want to do anything that isn't fun. Now, that doesn't mean there are not hard times. You've got to fundraise. You got to do a lot of things that might not be your most favorite things in the world to do. But the joy of having this community of change makers that range from 15 to 80, 91 involved with us who are excited about the project. We started an intergenerational cafe at Temple University and the age range was 18 to 91.
This is beautiful. This
So,
is what we need more of.
Andy, when we meet with our partners, we learn so much from each other. And what's so interesting is we have much more in common than what separates us.
That's
And
right,
I
we
don't
do.
any of us realize this going into this, but for the last 5 years, Dr. Tanya Giovanetti from the psychology department at Temple has worked with a team of us to create an intergenerational class, which she teaches, some of us teach, and the students teach. And we now have cafes because the students said, "We miss you. The course is over. How can we stay in touch?" So we're providing these intergenerational cafes to bring people of different generations together to talk about life and to also look at what are the social justice issues that you care about and
Right.
how can we collaborate and do something and make it happen.
Oh, and it takes that collective energy of all ages and minds and walks of life to create change that really, really happens. And listeners, please visit championsofcaring.org and watch the trailer for the Coral Ring Legacy. I know you'll be inspired to reach out to Barb and say, hey, how can I help too? I want to be part of this. Barb, how can we help you with your documentary? How's it going? What do we need to know?
I welcome help. I just welcome any of your listeners to reach out to me. Barbara at championsofcaring.org is my email. We're still fundraising. And if you can be generous to go to our website, there's a link there for contributions. That would be wonderful. If you have any recommendations on how we can get the word out in your community so that we can engage people older and younger in different communities. Andy, I have a global vision for this. We, I have started programs and worked with people in Cape Town, South Africa, now in Finland. And my hope is to bring this way of living everywhere. So if your listeners are from anywhere in the United States or anywhere in the world, we'd love to collaborate with you. We have an empowerment toolkit on our website that shows you how you can start a project. We have the trailer for you to see. We have intergenerational cafe materials for you to see. Please join me. This is a huge task. Let's create a kinder world, a world that we're proud to live in, a world that we're leaving for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren, because we can do this. We, the people, can do this, irrespective if you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, what your race, religion, creed, it doesn't matter. We're in this together. Let's come together and live our legacies now and change the world. And please watch the Coral Ring Legacy and tell me your Coral Ring story.
Oh my gosh. And be a mensch
And be a mensch. Yes, Mom, I told them to be a mensch.
and live your legacy now. Don't have it be something that someone thinks about after you're gone. Be
Oh,
your legacy.
here's a picture of
Hold on,
my
let me pop
beautiful,
you into full screen here. Okay, so folks who are,
this
um,
is my beautiful mother. And on
oh,
the other side, starting with the woman in the black hat, is my Amma, my grandmother, Golda Greenspan, my father, Henry Greenspan, my mother, Corolla Greenspan. That's not the best picture I ever took in my life, but there I am, I think at age 11, and my brother, Josh, who's a doctor
oh,
now.
thank you for sharing that beautiful folks, listeners, you can hop onto the YouTube channel and easily watch this podcast and watch Barbara in action and be sure to bring Barbara to your organization to speak. Yeah, you can see that this is a phenomenal woman who knows how to tell a story and captivate audiences, right? And anybody who wants to help Barb have you done a TEDx talk yet?
I want to do a TEDx.
Okay, so who's going
You
to
know,
volunteer and help Barb do her TEDx talk and make that happen? And it's all about getting the word out, spreading the word, because what you have done to make heroes out of our youth. We need this now more than ever. And what is even more powerful is you have the evidence of when you take youth and give them the tools and the pathways to be heroes for caring for others, to be social activists. We now see them in their 30s and 40s and the remarkable impact they're having in the world.
it's a way of life. And you know what I would say, because we're 2 days away, 3 days away from Thanksgiving. At your Thanksgiving table, tell the men's story. and ask everyone at the table, what's something you care a lot? And go around each generation, from grandparents to children to grandchildren, and maybe your family can take on a project. I can share a story about a family, and the grandfather was a big golfer and he loved golf, and his son was a golfer too. And they were teaching their teenage grandson how to play golf. And they were talking about this. And, the grandson says, a lot of inner city kids could never learn golf. They just don't have the means, the wherewithal. What if we started a program to bring golf into this inner city school where we live? And guess what, Andy? They
Right.
did. And I love that this was an intergenerational project.
Yeah.
The grandfather truthfully wrote the check. That's the part he wanted to play. But the son and the grandson went to the school, helped set up the whole program, and they went in and they started the program. So each person can give from whatever place they're comfortable.
Right.
Some people can write the checks, which is wonderful. Some people want to do the work. But I love the idea that it was from one generation to the next. So at Thanksgiving time, why don't you talk about what do you care about? What's important to you? What can we as a family do? And even if there are a lot of friends around the table, to create a kinder world, it will uplift the holiday. It'll take away from contentious conversation that a lot of people are worried about. And maybe something beautiful will come out of this. And if it does, please write to me and tell me what happened, because these are the kinds of stories we're looking for, because we inspire each other
We
with
sure
the
do.
of
With the
story.
storytelling. And speaking of stories, most of the listeners of the Don't Be Caged by Your Age are over 40, right? You've got the way pre-retirement folks. And I have to say, one of the side effects about this podcast is that 40 and 50-year-olds are coming up to me and saying, I'm so excited about the 60s and 70s and 80s, right? And so, as someone who continues to create meaningful work and inspire others at the age of 76, almost 77, what advice would you offer to those who want to live a purpose driven life and thrive after 65, but they're not sure? They're kind of like, how do I start? What do I do? I was just so tired from all the decades of working, but now I know I have more to give and I'm going to be living a lot longer. What advice do you have, Barb?
Simply just go for it. Okay. Don't overthink it, but do a self reflection. What are you passionate about? What do you care about? What do you never want to do again? Never. Like, don't make me fundraise. I've done so much fundraising in my life. Don't ask me to do that, please. What are my talents? What talents do you want to develop? Who can you put on your team? Who's the first person you can call and say, hey, I've got this idea about, and what do you think? Who else can you involve? Can you put together a list of ideas that you'd like to look at? Get your team, your tribe together, because alone it can be very lonely and isolating.
And
But
daunting,
and
and
daunting
daunting.
and overwhelming.
Yes.
Go to lunch, have people at your house or go out to lunch and just sit down and go, what do we all care about? What do we have in common here? How can we start? Who can we include? And if you, in my book, I'm not trying to sell my book here, but in the book and on the website, we have ideas of how you start this reflection process. It's really about reflection. At this stage of my life, question number one, what do I never want to do again? And I have a lot of answers to that one. And what do I really care about now? Truthfully, if those 30 and 40-year-old champions of caring hadn't called me to wish me a happy birthday and recommend this outrageous, insane idea of making a documentary, it would have never happened. But because they triggered something in that brain that said, wow, wouldn't that be great? Now, who do I know that can help me? Who
Right.
will inspire me? Because you know what? Stay away from naysayers. I have had so many naysayers in my life, like they go, oh boy. When I came back from Poland and I said to a lot of friends, I'm giving up my executive search practice, they looked at me like, oh boy, I don't know. There's a psychiatric unit at Bellevue. at NYU Medical Center in New York. And my friends from New York would say, we need a bed for her at Bellevue. She's losing it. And I didn't care. I knew they were thinking that. And I thought, nope, this Auschwitz coral ring, toothbrush, all of this is propelling me. And now I have these extraordinary 30 and 40-year-old champions of caring saying, Barb, we'll be in the documentary. We'll help you. That's the key. Who will be on your team? Who will help you actualize your vision? Get that passion going. Don't take no for an answer, but be realistic. Smart, start small. But as my mother would say, why dream in black and white when you can dream in Technicolor? Always dream in Technicolor.
Oh my gosh, this has been such an inspirational conversation. Listeners, please, please, please go to Champions of Change. Champions of Caring. I got so involved in the change in the world that I apologize for that. Follow Barb everywhere she goes. Leave comments on how you are taking this information from Barb and how you can create change and be on purpose while you thrive after 65. And for anyone who's interested, definitely follow Champions of Caring everywhere they are. Add wind to their sails. I know whoever you are that's listening right now or watching this video right now, I know you know how you can help move this forward. And I bet there's something that you care deeply about that you want to focus on. Because while the world is suffering from a little disenchantment right now, it's up to us to re-enchant the world with love, passion, caring, and all the ingredients of a good mensch. Barbara, thank you so much for joining me for this meaningful conversation. I cannot tell you how you have impacted my world, touched my heart and soul, and I am just so blessed to know you.
Oh, Andy, back at you. I feel the same way. And thank you for giving me the platform to share my vision and my passion. And I say to your listeners, please reach out. We can't do this alone. Let's create a thriving group of people with excitement and energy that can change the world together. And we need it now more than ever. And 76 is just a number. That
Right.
doesn't define us. We can show the world, but we'll do it with all generations sitting together, bringing
That's
their best selves to the table and sharing their vision, their skills, and their passion. So happy Thanksgiving to you and to your listeners. And it was a joy and a privilege to be with you today.
Oh, thank you, Barb. And listeners, remember, I mean, Barb personifies this. You have so much more to give. Do not let those internalized ageist beliefs prevent you, block you, or limit you from pursuing new dreams and opportunities. The world needs you. We are not done with you until you take your last breath, okay? So until next time, I'm wishing you all a delicious day everywhere you glow. Cheers from Boston. Cheers from where Barb's hailing from.
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, PA. And thank you so much for tuning in. Continue shattering those ageist beliefs. Cheers, everyone. Listeners, I'm so grateful you carved out time to tune in and grab the gems from this delicious conversation. Be sure to hop on over to Don't Be Caged by Your Age on LinkedIn or Instagram to share your thoughts about ageism and unretirement. Because in this space, your age doesn't define you, it refines you. If you are inspired by a story you hear, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe, share, rate, and review the podcast. To receive an alert whenever a new show is posted, please join the Don't Be Caged by Your Age newsletter. Every month, you'll receive links to the podcast and helpful resources for creating possibilities for your unretirement days. Thank you for tuning in. I am so excited to hear how you found ways to thrive after 65. Waving from Boston, cheers.